Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Icons of the F4L. Welcome to the F4L Headquarters Podcast. I am your host. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Icons of the F4L. I am your host. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Icons of the F4L. I am your host, the F4L icon, Sean Jazz Stevens. Here to welcome you to the F4L Headquarters Podcast, where I know it's been a little while, and it's been such a long time that I even forgot how to do the intro. Go figure. All right, everyone. So today is a very special day. Sorry about that, folks. All right, so we are here live for all things that are the podcast, and if I'm being completely transparent, this is to test the new system. We had some technical issues, I guess you'd say, and what I'm trying to do is fine-tune everything so that way tonight's episode will be flawless as it always is. Going to show that, hey, things happen sometimes and it's okay, and whatnot. So, what we're going to do is I'm going to do a little quick, little update kind of a podcast show first for you guys. Bring you guys up to speed. I want to say thank you to my bat band, Bertram. He is our leader of our bat band. I mean, not many people have bats who are very musically inclined. So, one of the things we've been doing lately is having our bat band, get us in the right mood. So, Bertram, why don't you guys fire up and sing that song so we can all pay tribute and stand at attention. Excellent job, Bertram. Excellent job. You know, Bertram and his amazing bat band, ladies and gentlemen, they are the most talented bats you'll ever hear. And they sing flawlessly, don't they? Anyway, folks, so we're going to, have little updates here and there. So, first and foremost, I guess that we should probably chat a little bit about a bowling update. So, 2 weeks ago, I had the most appalling game of bowling I could have ever done. For those people who don't know, my son and I have joined a bowling league this year, and also to be transparent. Now, where I live, we have a completely different style of bowling than most of the world does. We have, where I grew up, we have something called candlepin bowling. It's a little easier to describe like speaking wise versus to describe like typing wise. So those people who are familiar with how bowling works, you are familiar with traditional bowling, what everyone in the world knows to be bowling. We call 10-pin, and technically speaking, that is what that is called. Now, as a kid growing up, we would call that big ball bowling because the balls are bigger than that of a candlepin ball. A candlepin ball is about, at the most, it probably weighs about maybe 2.5 ounces, or 2.5 pounds, rather. They're not very big. They fit about in the palm of your hand. There are no holes in them, like in traditional 10-pin bowling. And really what candlepin bowling relies on is your wrist and making sure your wrist is straight and, all the other things that go along with bowling. Now, a 10-pin bowling, it's a little bit of a different animal, right? Because first of all, you're dealing with bigger balls, and they weigh slightly more. The average weight of a bowling ball can start anywhere between 6 pounds and go all the way up to 16 pounds. 16 pounds being the heaviest. In retrospect, it's also utilizing your entire arm versus just your wrist. And also the pins that in candlepin are slightly, I guess you'd say, they're visually different, obviously. They are taller than that of a 10-pin, or a what you guys know of the pin, bowling pin. So it's going to be smaller and rounder, resembling what looks like a candlestick. Like a white candlestick, and that's kind of the resemblance of a candlepin. And it's set up, there are still 10 pins like there is in regular bowling. And the difference is, for the most part, one, the balls are smaller, the pins are taller, so theoretically, it's slightly more difficult in the sense, with 10-pin, you have a bigger ball, the pins are slightly bigger, so if you get connection, you should be pretty good about knocking down multiple pins. Now, here's the thing about that. With candlepin, you are given 3 balls per box. So in traditional bowling, you're given 2 balls. So you get to throw 1 ball, theoretically, hopefully you get a strike. If you don't get a strike, you get a chance at a spare, or the best you can do within 2 balls. And also, in between within that box, what they will do is, after you throw your first initial ball in traditional bowling, they'll reset the pins, and the only pins that will come back up are the ones that you did not knock down. For me, I am known for leaving like a single pin. And to be fair and to be honest, single pins have always been quite an interesting challenge. Because you are pretty far away from yourself and the target. So you have to have pretty good Hawkeye perception of that. But once situated, should be okay. And situated and whatnot. So there's that. So in traditionally speaking, it is slightly different in the sense that with candlepin, rather than resetting the pin in between the box, and also you're given 3 balls per box. So you throw a ball, and you get, let's say you throw a ball, you get 5 pins. Well, you can throw another ball, and maybe you get you knock them down on the second ball. That would be a spare, and then you'll be all set. And then you get a bonus ball with your next turn up. That's traditionally how that would go. But let's say, for the sake of argument, you throw a ball at the first ball and you knock down, say, 8 pins. And then you throw the second ball that you traditionally would get and you knock down another pin. But there's that one left pesky pin. Now, in traditional bowling, you'd be given a 9, and that would be the end of your turn. But in candlepin bowling, you are allowed to one more ball to knock that pin down for a 10. And the other thing is, in regular bowling, they clear the wood. In candlepin, they do not clear the wood in between frames. So when you're bowling your box, the pins that you knock down stay up on the playing zone, as they say. Now, there are clearly rules and so forth to prevent things like hitting the pin that's in the gutter or things of that nature. Those balls simply won't count. If you hit a pin that falls in the gutter and it hits the pins that are standing, those pins that are knocked down will not count. Same thing as if a ball was to go in the gutter and come out of the gutter and hit a pin, that pin also would not count. That is both the same in both bowling, except in candlepin, any wood, as we call it, that is left on the playing zone, which is all around where the pins are, you're allowed to use those pins to help you, further your box. And theoretically, this is the best way. You'll get really lucky if you have a really good, what we call, drop. Let's say you throw the pins down, and you have one pin standing, but you have all this wood laying all around that one pin. Well, in regular traditional bowling, they would clear all that wood, and you'd have to hit that single pin standing. Now, in 10-pin and candlepin, however, you can actually utilize that wood that's lying around that pin to your advantage and knock that pin down with the wood that is down. And that's completely fair use. And that's probably the best difference between the two styles. Now, the other thing is just adjusting between wrist and your arm, because that's the biggest thing, and the weights of the ball. Traditionally speaking, in doing research and so forth, I do tend to have a heavier candlepin ball because I have been bowling candlepin for a number of years. In fact, I've been a candlepin league bowler since I was, 13 years old in an adult league, which meant that I bowled with other adults who are 7 times older than me with multiple more years of experience. But I followed the rules and the guidelines and the proper etiquette of bowling, which there are many rules and guidelines you should always follow. Like, for example, the bowler to the right always goes first. These are things that, should always be practiced, and we always do. And that's, traditionally speaking, how that works. And that's kind of cool. So, that's kind of, the biggest difference. So now, this year, my son, who has done 10-pin before, 10-pin is what everyone else calls bowling. And this is like the first league I've bowled in 10-pin. And it is a different style of bowling, because again, it's your arm versus your wrist. It's a bigger ball versus, things. So there is some adjustments, and I'm not ashamed to say that I'm still kind of getting my footing behind 10-pin. However, what I'm finding is the more I put in and the extra practice I put in and the more I do these things, much like I did in candlepin, you get better in repetition. I know there are a lot of people out there like, oh, my bowling game is terrible. Well, the only way you're going to improve upon that is doing it more. In all honesty, that's kind of the best way to do it, really. The only way to get better at something is by repetition and continuing to practice hard. Not everyone can be, pro bowlers at the top of the thing, and there's some style that goes along in it, right? So that's traditionally speaking how that's going. So a couple weeks ago, I had a really rough week. There were multiple distractions going on, and I think bowling is one of those games that I think you need some focus, but also you need to be able to, just not distract yourself. And I could, list a bunch of things that would, determine that the bottom line was my performance was terrible. I knew that. And because of that, our team suffered. But not just me. I mean, we all struggled as a team because in a team sport, your team struggles together. If any team sport, that goes for anything you do. There's no I in team, which means, theoretically, the team let each other down. But I myself did not do my part to uphold my part of the team, which in bowling, really would be contributed to the person you're bowling against when you're doing a league, right? Because you're bowling against other teams. It's usually the same team once per week. And you'll bowl that person who goes up with you wherever you're at. Now, whether you're the first bowler, second bowler, and traditionally speaking, whoever you're bowling next to is your bowler. And the idea would be for you to, the ideal thing to do is to out-bowl the person you're bowling against. Because sometimes you can't control what everyone else on the team does. Your anchor should be your strongest bowler in the sense of the bowler who is going to be traditionally the one who's going to get all the strikes and the spares and be the one who really holds the biggest burden of the whole team. Now, the starter bowler is someone who basically the starter bowler has just as much pressure because they set the mood and the tone for the game. So if the starter bowler is bowling and they, have a good luck and they get a strike or a spare or what we call a mark, or if they, don't do so well, then you need to know, if I'm the next person, which I am, then my job would be to try to do better than, to try to cover the points that weren't there, but also beat my bowler. Because traditionally speaking, as long as you're trying to beat your bowler within the game, that traditionally should mean that you should have a significant chance of of winning at least. As long as everyone else on their team, has the same mentality, where they each bowl their bowler. Because ultimately, if you're bowling against someone and you're out bowling them, then there's really no way for them to win, right? That's how that works. Well, last week was poor. This week, however, I bowled like myself again. I was calm, cool, and collective. I was energetic. I was ready. And I brought it. And I was so annoyed about last week's contribution, which is a lack thereof, that I decided it was best for me to go back in and go in with a headstrong and go in seek and destroy. And that's exactly what I did. I entered the game with a clear focus that I'm going to do well, and I outbowled myself. My average has gone up, and you have an average that traditionally speaking you averagely get every week, every time you bowl, and that becomes your average. You break that between 3 different frames. And again, this is me, and I'm still in the early phases getting used to this style of bowling, which the world knows as 10-pin. The world knows as bowling. We call 10-pin. I think at some point what I'm going to do is have like a live demonstration of each of these bowling so you guys can see this. Because believe it or not, there is another form of bowling called duck pin bowling. I know people who have never bowled before, or people who are used to bowling, have probably never heard the terms candlepin bowling or duck pin bowling. But they are very much a real thing, but they're a regional thing. So candlepin is traditionally a New England-based version of bowling. It was actually made in Massachusetts. Worcester, to be exact, is where the birthplace of candlepin bowling started. And traditionally speaking, in New England, you used to see any kind of bowling that happened in Massachusetts, New Hampshire, would be candlepin leagues and candlepin houses. And then we also have duckpin bowling, which is kind of a hybrid of the two. So with duckpin bowling, you get 3 balls like you do in candlepin. The balls do not have holes in them like the candlepin balls, and they're slightly bigger than a candlepin ball. Maybe about the size of a grapefruit, maybe. Not as big as, a traditional, bowling ball, what the world knows as a bowling ball. But they're slightly bigger than that of a candlepin bowling ball. And there are no holes in them. So imagine trying to throw, say, I don't know. So if a candlepin ball is about the size of a softball, a duckpin ball, excuse me, I would probably refer to maybe as slightly smaller than maybe or maybe slightly bigger than a shot put ball, if anybody is familiar. Or maybe, if I'm being honest, a candlepin ball you probably would probably look like a bocce ball for those people who've ever played bocce. A duckpin ball is slightly bigger than that. So in weight and size, slightly bigger than that. It also is used to be in your arm, in your wrist, because it's not, no holes there. And you do get 3 balls like you do in candlepin. However, they clear the wood like they do in traditional bowling. So there is no wood to use in duckpin bowling. In duckpin bowling, the pins are flatter than that of a candlepin and a 10-pin, so they're slightly smaller. Imagine a bowling pin that you guys probably are picturing as a bowling pin, traditionally speaking, flattened, and kind of resembles sort of a duck, I guess, like a rubber duck kind of an idea. But it is round, obviously, and it's flatter, and that's kind of how the duck pins work. Again, there are 10, like there are in all of the above. But oddly enough, we refer to bowling, that everyone calls bowling, we refer to as 10-pin because they are bigger balls, and that is traditionally speaking what it is called. So hopefully that people understand the differences between the bowling. And I got to say, last week I held my end of the bargain up. I went over my average, and guess what happened? We ended up winning. We took all of the points in the game, and because I did my part, my other teammates did their part by beating their bowlers, we overcame that, and we did really well. And we, showed people that we still have the it factor, so to speak. So I was really happy about that. I was proud of the fact that I was able to contribute to my team and help them out this week. Because sometimes when you can bowl your average but slightly over, what you're doing is anytime any of your other bowling teammates might have a struggling time, let's say I have a really good night, but the guy either before or after me doesn't necessarily get their average. Well, because I went over my average, those bonus pins that I bowled will help offset that frame and that pin fall, because that's what you need really to win. And thankfully we were able to do that. We won, and we're going to be climbing back up. Now, weeks ago, we were in first place. And then, we got in a slump, and we dropped down to third, which is where we were. Last week, we did really well, so I can't wait to see where we're at. Maybe second place. And we'll probably be back up to the first place eventually. I'm not sure. Most leagues, they split it in half between, the first half of the season, which is like fall through around now, the holiday time, December. And then what will happen is in January, the second half will start, and that's traditionally speaking how bowling will work. Sometimes they break them into quarters, then it's a different story altogether. So there's that. But yeah, I'm very happy. Bowling team's going well. Everyone's adapting well. Everyone's, doing what everything they're supposed to be doing. And I'm doing my part, and I got to continue doing that. So there's that. So, Ants, why don't you bring us to our next little segment here, guys? Ants, I'm sorry. Bertram, take us to the next segment, bud. All right, folks. So, icons of the F4L, the YouTube-based wrestling show that we've been doing for a number of years. We've had people who have been on the show from that. And we're very excited, as one of the things we're preparing for is we're going to be having a watch-along that'll happen right here on the F4L Headquarters podcast that will be simultaneous with our YouTube-based wrestling show. Now, what's going to be interesting about that is we're going to have numerous people from across all of our different rosters. So from our Dream Warriors and our Dream Masters who are going to be joining us. Dream Warriors, again, is our female roster. Dream Masters is our males. And from two different variations, right? So for the Dream Masters, for example, it's really broken into two different divisions. The Telenet Universal side of things, that's where you'll find your pure athletes and your entertainers and things of that nature. That's also where you'll find Sean Awesome, my son, and his group. And all of them are on the Telenet Universal side of things, versus the other side, which is the Dream Masters BA MMA division, which is where myself is, along with some other very talented people who tend to be a little bit more hardcore, if you would, as far as being kind of tough, really tough, known for being fighters, but also the people who contribute and are trained in multiple martial arts and things of that nature. That's where you'll find them. Traditionally speaking, we've had some fantastic people over the years, and there has been we've been really lucky to have some amazing talented people this year alone. We have talented people every year, but this year alone we've added some new faces, and they've really added an element of excitement to the shows, and we're proud of all of them. And one of the things that I believe in is people, and I believe in all of these people. On this show here, I've done lists of future UFC fighters and future UFC champions. And a lot of the people who we feature are people who I believe to be future UFC champions, as far as that goes. Now, the Telenet Universal side of things, there are people who I believe could be the next Academy Award winner, the next Grammy nominee and winner of any Grammy Award. Because I believe in people. I believe in dreams, and I believe if you're willing to put the work in, anything can be achieved. I am living proof of that, folks. And traditionally speaking, we're really excited, as my son will be joining me for this watch-along. We'll have the audio part of it, like always, but also we're going to have, for the first time ever, the video portion, so we'll actually get to see, excuse me, we'll actually be able to literally see each other watching these, reacting to these, the best of 2023. I will have more updates about what that format will look like and what we're going to be doing for that a little later on. But some of the people who I know will be joining us are people who either have been on this show a couple times or maybe even once, but are eager to come back, or some people who have been part of Val's watch-alongs in years past, and it could be a lot of fun. One of the things that we're looking at, and one of the things that we're talking about, my son and I, one of the reasons why we're planning so carefully is because of the fact we have basically people from 5 different time zones who are going to be joining us. So we're trying to find a kind of middle ground, if you would, for what time works best for everybody. It will be taking place during holiday breaks, so school and commitments like that shouldn't be much of an issue. But in the same sense, we understand, we get it. So we're trying to find a time that is sensible to everybody, that coordinates and people can kind of watch for a while and be excited for that. So stick around for those updates. As I said, this is a short show today, this part, because what I want to do is test to make sure everything is working accordingly. Later on tonight, I have a first-time guest here at the F4L Headquarters podcast. He is I guess you'd say he's what do they call them? He's on Instagram, so he's a Instagram what is the term for them? Influencer, I suppose. But this young man has a lot of different goals and dreams, and I think he's a very talented young man. I think he's very pleasant, and I think he deals with a lot of things, and I think that he deals with things, I mean, in the sense of there are some times I just see people give him a hard time, and I think that's horrible. And as anybody who knows me knows, I can't stand bullies. So we're gonna invite our friend Drake Larson to the show for the first time here tonight to talk about things that he wants to do in his life and what he's up to and kind of where he sees his journey through life going. And you know what? I think this kid has a lot of talent and a lot of personality. And I think people, if you want to learn more about him and kind of see what everyday life is for most people, I think it's a good, fresh insight into modern day life for the average teen. We've had people on this show who are so immersed into something that they're in the middle of, whether it be an athlete or an entertainer, that a lot of the times people have this thing where sometimes people maybe have many ambitions but don't know where to go. So tonight when we get Drake on, which, by the way, what a name, Drake Larson. That's a stage name if I've ever heard one. But we're going to have him on the show later on, and we'll chat about what his goals are, what things that he wants to do, and the fact of the matter is I've worked a lot of different fields, so maybe we can point him in the right direction, perhaps. You never know. And the bottom line is, when people come on this F4L Headquarters podcast, what I want people to know is you're going to be yourself always, and you're going to be treated with respect and treated the F4L way, with love, care, and compassion, understanding, and respect for each other's differences. Now, what that means is anyone who comes on this show is going to be treated with the most respect. They're going to be treated like a friend, like you would invite them into your home, but it's on a podcast. They're going to be relaxed, and they're not going to be judged for things. They're not going to be made fun of. They're going to be nice and comfortable to be themselves, and not to have distractions of people making fun of them, because we're never going to make someone uncomfortable on this show. Which is why, traditionally speaking, this poor young man deals with so many things when he's trying to get those things done. And I can see that there's a lot of talent there, and there's a lot of, ambition there. But I think that sometimes, the journey to be well known and sometimes having to deal with some nonsense, it's hard to really judge where you're going to go and what you're going to do. So I personally, I'm going to give him the platform tonight. I'm going to invite him on to, be uninterrupted and really introduce him to the world. And, because I know a lot of people listen to the show and a lot of various people, I'm hoping people give him a chance to be himself and listen to, this young man and where he can finally be himself and not be judged and have a good time, So that's the goal for tonight. That's going to be 8 p.m. Central Time and 10 p.m. Eastern Time. That's my time. That'll be right here on the F4L Headquarters podcast a little later on. So for now, ladies and gentlemen, what I'm going to do is end this show for now. I want to say thank you for joining me for this little update episode. There's a lot of big things coming. I'm looking forward to the watch along. That should be a lot of fun and very chaotic. But it's going to be a lot of fun for the watch along. For the watch along, you can join us on the podcast, but also you can watch the watch along with us on the day that we will announce coming up. So more later. For now, I am the F4L icon, Sean Jazz Stevens, and Bertram, play the music to close us out, brother. Thank you, folks, and may all your dreams come true. Peace.